If you're a software engineer, you've been there. You're finally relaxing after a long day and you get paged. Something's broken. Are the servers down? Is the database slow? Is there a bug in the latest deployment? Now the whole team is panicked, going from tool to tool and person to person to troubleshoot the problem. That won't happen if you get New Relic. New Relic brings together 16 monitoring tools so teams can see across the entire stack from one place. More importantly, with New Relic, you can pinpoint problems down to the line of code to fix problems more quickly. That's why more than 14,000 companies, including DoorDash, GitHub, and Epic Games, use New Relic to debug and improve their software. The next late night call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does. You can get the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigs of data free forever. No credit card required. Just visit newrelic.com/cloudcast. That's newrelic.com/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody is doing well. We are closing out the month of June of 2022, sort of midway point of the year, and I'm going to kind of keep the Cloud News of the Week sort of short this week, because there was not a lot of big news. There was a few things here and there and a lot of non-tech news for the week, but just a couple of things, and then I'm going to kind of get to a quick overview of how we're going to go through the next couple of weeks, because the schedule is going to be slightly different, not a whole lot different, but just so everybody knows as we get into the 4th of July, Independence Day holiday weekend here in the United States, or as we always like to, congratulate our good friend and first guest, Christian Riley. We like to, send him out a happy second place day for the American independence. So, anyways, real quick on Cloud News of the Week, couple of things. Aquasec, the company who is doing very, very well in container security, and CIS released the software supply chain security guidance. So some very good guidance on a topic that I know a lot of people are really digging into in terms of software security and software supply chain. So good set of work that came out of there, kind of some specifications on how to start putting together your software supply chain if you're not already securing them, and kind of alignment to some government standards. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight in Cloud News of the Week was our good friend Sam Ramji, who had done tons and tons of things in his career. We got to know him when he became the head of the Cloud Foundry Foundation, and originally I think the CNCF, he was involved with that, and a lot of open source projects, and Sam's just sort of been a good friend of the show for a long time. He is now running strategy over at DataStax, the Apache Cassandra company, and they just raised $115 million at $1.6 billion valuation. So congratulations to the team at DataStax and to our friend Sam, and with that, I'm going to kind of cut Cloud News of the Week short. Like I said, not tons and tons of stuff going on this week, but I did want to kind of give a quick update. We're going to do a show this week, regular show, not interview show, but we are kind of in the middle of the year, and we're doing some mid-year shows. So last week we did a State of Cloud show with the folks from Bessemer Ventures. That was really kind of looking at their report for State of the Cloud. This week we get a chance to sit down. It's Aaron and I, maybe the first or second time this year we've really done just a him and I show, but we're also joined by our friend Brandon Whichard from the Software Defined Talk Show. I know he's been on a number of times in the last few years. We love having him on. But the three of us sat down. We did sort of a long form show, really looking at kind of not the state of the cloud, but just sort of a mid-year update. What's been going on so far this year, reviewing the big topics of the day, the big events of the day, the big news of the half year, if you will. And so, this is a really good show. It's a long show, and as we highlight in the show, this one's really intended for anybody who's taken summer vacation. So it's a little bit longer, and we go into a lot of topics. So give you some good car ride, plane flight, getting away at the pool kind of time. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap it up. We will be taking a break. We take 2 breaks a year, one mid-year for this 4th of July break. So there will not be a show on July 3rd. We'll be back on July 6th. So we'll not have a show on July 3rd. And then we do one at the end of the year around the New Year's holiday that we don't take one. But every other week, 50 weeks a year, we get you a show, a couple of shows a week. So enjoy this one with Aaron and Brandon and myself, and enjoy the holiday for those of you here in the States. And for those of you outside the country, we will be back on July 6th. We will be there. And we're going to get to Brandon and Aaron right after the break. Today's show is sponsored by CloudZero. For software-driven companies focused on growing margins, CloudZero is the only cloud cost intelligence platform that puts engineering in control by connecting technical decisions to business results. By analyzing cloud services like AWS and Snowflake, CloudZero provides real-time cost insights that help you maximize margins. Engineering teams can answer critical questions like, who are my most expensive customers? How much does this specific feature cost our business? What's the cost impact of re-architecting this application? With cost anomaly alerts via Slack, product-specific data views, and granular engineering context that makes it easy to investigate any cost, CloudZero is your complete cloud cost intelligence platform, connecting the dots between high-level trends and individual line items. Join companies like Drift, Rapid7, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today. That's cloudzero.com/cloudcast. And we're back. And folks, as we often do this time of year, it is around the midpoint of the year, and lots of folks are going on summer vacations, and their kids are out of school, and all sorts of things are going on. And so what we like to do this time of year is sort of give you a longer mid-year show. We sort of try and kill two birds with one stone. One gives us an excuse to talk about how the year has been so far. And number two, it gives us a chance to go long, maybe 35, 45 minutes. Sometimes they go 50 minutes. And that gives you an excuse to get away from your family if you want to. If you want to just zone out while you're going for a long trip or something, it allows you to just put the earbuds in and listen to us ramble for a while. So, Aaron, good to have you on the show.
Yep. It's been a little while since we've both been on a show, so it's good to talk to you.
And we are joined by what's become sort of a tradition on the mid-year show, Brandon Whichard from the Software Defined Talk Show. Brandon, welcome. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to today's discussion, and of course, we want to let everyone get away from their families. That's the best reason to podcast. So fantastic.
That's right. So what we decided to do for this one was, we don't often do a 3-man pod. I know, Brandon, you're a pro at the 3-man pod. So what we decided to do format wise was we asked everybody to bring 2 or 3 questions, 2 or 3 topics to cover for the mid-year show. And then we're just going to let folks one person can throw out the topic. The other 2 can comment on it. One person can soapbox on it, however they want to. But we brought about 6 to 8 or 9 topics. So we'll try and get through as many as we can. We'll try and keep it at a reasonable amount of time. But Brandon, as the guest, is a good Southern host. Why don't we let you go first? You can either pick the topic or you can ask the first question.
Yeah, well, fantastic. I'll fire one off. Well, I feel like both of you. I think the Cloudcast maybe got started way back when VMware was, I don't know, the big thing. So I feel like maybe it's the biggest tech acquisition, at least this year, and maybe a long time. And I really wanted to get both of your takes around, VMware, at least as of this recording, we think it's going to be acquired by Broadcom. Things could happen, but let's assume that's going to happen. And it sort of brings to end a long history of VMware being bounced around through many companies. So the question I want to ask each of you, and I guess I'll start with you, Aaron, is do you think the ultimate outcome of VMware, would have been different if it had, if you will, followed the more traditional path of like going IPO and been a standalone company for like a decade rather than being part of EMC and Dell? Do you think we still end up in the same place, or do you think VMware does something different?
No, I think this is the end of an era. And I think maybe it happened a little sooner than I thought it was going to happen. I thought there was a couple more years in this. I mean, we've talked about it on the show many times. Think of it as like an S-curve, right? Like VMs were a thing, and then it went through the curve, and we're on the backside of that curve, right? Like we are approaching commodity status for virtual machines and virtualization. And no matter how hard VMware has tried, with all the different acquisitions and, the software-defined data center and going into security and going, upstack for a little while, and then with Maritz and then selling everything off and going back to basics, if you will. At the end of the day, it's a virtualization company. And we're at the end of that tail end of that cycle. Like I said, it's a couple years too soon, but I thought it was going to happen.
It's a little bit faster. Oh, what about your take, Brian? Do you think same kind of end, no matter what they had lived through as a corporate entity?
Yeah, I don't. I think when I first got involved with VMware, or was sort of adjacent to VMware, was like in the 2007-ish time, from 2007, 2008, and by that time, they were owned by EMC. They were kind of in this big uptick of people using virtualization, and to a certain extent, like people were like, oh well, they're they're intrinsically linked to this hardware company, and that's kind of weird. And they're intrinsically linked to this like software company. But to a certain extent, I feel like just the fact that they were this great thing that so many big companies were fighting over, right? So you had, the whole storage industry fighting over like, hey, VMware, I should be your favorite. Make sure we're your favorite. And like those folks, they dragged VMware into a lot of places. I mean, you had a lot of companies that were really well established, whether it was the server vendors or the storage vendors, and eventually it became like Cisco and all this stuff. Like I think they dragged VMware into a lot of places, and not to undermine all the cool things that VMware could do and the amazingness of their technology, but like I don't know, as like an independent company, I don't know if they would have gotten the traction they would have. I don't know if just being like, well, we have these OEMs with the hardware vendors, the server vendors, and so our stuff is just installed. Like I feel like having the rest of the industry somehow not only want them to be their best friend, but also the fact that you had somebody like EMC who had such this dominant culture, and people were like kind of fighting against EMC as much as they were trying to play nice with VMware, like drove a lot of just keeping VMware front and center like every day, because you had, I mean, the networking industry was scared to death of it, the server industry was scared to death of it, the storage industry was scared to death of VMware. And I think all of them essentially, kind of helped lift up what they did. So I don't know. I mean, I think, I'm sure VMware people would love to tell you like, oh, we would have been way better independently and so on and so forth. But I think they got in the right set of boats, and the water rose, the way it was supposed to rise for all boats.
No, I like that. That's a cool counter take, because it's really, they benefited from it versus being held back, which I think you're right. I think probably, I don't know, I probably would have said they were held back. Well, I don't know.
Completely off script. And Brandon, for a question for you too, because I just thought of this as Brian was kind of saying that. And it's something we've talked about many times here. So VMware was like this thing, and and it was a big thing, and it was everywhere. It grew super quick, and it was the virtualization wave company, if you will. What happened with Docker? Like Docker was all of those places and did all of those waves and didn't get acquired. We all of acquisitions that they decided not to take. Is it like, to maybe back up Brian's analogy a little bit, if Docker would have gotten acquired, do you think they would have had a different path?
Well, I think, on the Docker side of it, I've always thought that because of VMware's success, the industry collectively decided there will never be another VMware. Like, we don't want that to happen again. So as soon as containers emerged and then Docker was the leader, it was like everyone announced orchestration. And then, of course, as all of you know, Kubernetes sort of went out as like a sort of like an equal playing field, if you will, right? And that was all, I think in a way that was to blunt VMware. And that's always my biggest question with this, is like, I think I like the take of like, it probably ends up here no matter what, probably a few years too soon. But I would like to see kind of the counterfactual I'd like to see is, well, what if VMware was truly standalone and sort of just hyper-focused in on containers, and as Docker emerged, do they do something different, right? Versus being kind of passed around for all these financial metrics. Do they kind of, and obviously they're doing that today with Tanzu, but do they, if you will, respond faster? I mean, history would show incumbents usually don't, but I would like to see if they would have done that. And then, of course, kind of to your point, like I still am a little disappointed they're not going to get like the 3 to 5 year runway to see, okay, what does Tanzu become? Like, does it, take over the world, or does it just sort of never get there? And then it's like, then if after that, if it didn't take off, I'd be like, sure, being acquired is probably as good an outcome as anything. So that's what I always will wonder about VMware going forward.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to wonder, I mean, the big question I think everybody's going to have about VMware, in 6 months or whenever this thing closes and it kind of finalizes. And, I think there's going to be two questions that are going to happen. Like, one is going to be, do they get broken up the way that everybody talks about them kind of getting broken up, or unfortunately, massive amounts? I mean, because the way you look at the numbers that the way that Broadcom lays them out, I mean, they basically say, it's something along the lines of like, well, they do $3.5 billion of free cash flow right now, and we need them to do like $8.5 billion within a couple of years. And the only way to get there is either like you massively grow the company, which nobody's quite figured out how to do over the last 5 or 6 years, or you massively shrink the expenses of it, right? Or you sell off stuff or whatever you do. Like it's a really weird thing, because it's not like like to a certain extent, like in my mind, I'm going like, okay, well, maybe this is a little bit like BlackBerry when Apple came along, and it was kind of this, well, maybe it's not going to take over, and then all of a sudden it was like BlackBerry was gone, and I don't think VMware. I mean, they were gone in like 4 or 5 years. I don't think VMware goes away because there's so many things that are dependent on running on VMware, and there's so much stuff on premises. But I mean, like it's a weird well, what's going to happen to VMware because
it only goes away if it gets replaced.
Yeah,
right?
It won't get,
like BlackBerry got replaced because iPhone came along,
right?
These others, right? And so what replaces it, kind of thing.
And I think the answer to your question kind of lies in kind of the analysis you gave before. I think what continues to be a great business is the virtualization sold to the IT operations group, right? And that to me is the cash cow. And I think if you're a customer of it and you're using that today, and especially if you're a large customer, that's where Broadcom will spend all of its time and efforts, right? That's what they've done with CA and others. And so they're going to keep that business going, indefinitely. That'll be here forever, right? And I think that's why it's so attractive to a Broadcom, is that'll throw off free cash, like I said, practically forever, probably for the next 40 years. So, but you probably just won't see like the investments in anything else. Like Tanzu's the biggest thing, right? I think that's as they go through the portfolio analysis, it's like, all right, do they think they're going to maybe give it a few more years of investment, or are they going to pull the plug and be like, no, let's just stay with IT ops? But, so that's the part I'm always interested in, but I don't think they'll do anything with it other than shut it down and just, milk the VMware virtualization base and keep them happy for a long time to come.
Yeah. The other question that keeps kind of rolling around in my mind is, so there's like the vSphere virtualization stuff, and then you have the stuff that's like immediately adjacent to it. So like, I think they have like about $1 billion storage business, or like vSAN. I think the networking business is like about $1 billion with NSX. And like, do they sell that stuff off? Like, does that stuff get sold off as a product or like its own thing? And like, could you see somebody like, I don't know, like NetApp or Cisco coming along and going, hey, I'm going to just buy the de facto networking for VMware, or something like that. I'm going to buy the de facto storage for VMware. Does that happen, or do they hold on to those assets and they just look at stuff like VDI or Tanzu or something else as the places where you go, okay, those get potentially shed?
I'd say I think you're right. I think they hold on to those core businesses because they're profitable, and I think large enterprises like them. So I think those would stay there. Although, you just gave a good, it's a good idea for a Cisco business development. Why not launch a call in there, see what businesses they don't want, and then but I think the other stuff is either they get rid of it or shut it down, and probably look to sell it off to somebody else because it's just not going to be in alignment with what they want going forward.
Yeah. Aaron, you want to throw one out there?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw out this one, and actually a plug for the Clouded Judgment Substack. Did an article recently, and it was a really good analysis about everything's moving to a SaaS world, right? Subscription versus consumption, especially in an economic downturn. And so if we all kind of say, hey, the future is SaaS, does the consumption model matter? Versus subscription, as long as there's value. And there's, like I said, really good analysis on it, but I just wanted both of your thoughts. And so, Brandon, I'll kind of throw it to you first. Does subscription versus consumption matter these days?
Yeah, I thought it was a good article too. I thought it was interesting. It was a very financial way to look at it, as that newsletter does, which is good. But I kind of came back with a little different take around that subscription, sort of paying. And I really think of that as sort of like paying by user for the most of the time, like how many users can use it, versus like, how much of something I'm consuming, like Snowflake or AWS. But my thought was kind of maybe starting from my own biases, more on like, the product user side. It's like, to me, like neither model really matters. It's more about picking the model that incents the behavior you want on the user side, right? So if you're really concerned that if you don't want people to be constrained, like, oh, every time I run this, this report, I'm costing my cost center money, right? Then it's sort of like a subscription base. It's nice because it's just like people don't think about that. They use it more, or vice versa. Like if I want to really restrict the data inside a large enterprise, like Salesforce is a classic example. It's always hard to get a Salesforce license if you're not like a sales rep and you're not using it, but there's lots of data in there. So it's limiting who can see it. So to me, it's more around, every time I'm thinking about these products, it's like which, if you will, pricing model incents the behavior that I want to see. Do I want to see more people using it? Then maybe I try to make it consumption based and just get it out there. Or if I want to really kind of make sure that people feel like they can run reports whenever they want. Well, maybe I do something user-based. But I think to me, it's just product by product. And you just kind of have to find the model that works the most there. And I kind of put the finances secondary. So to me, it's sort of like the finances will work it out if you incent the right behavior. But I don't know, Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's a weird world, because it's like if you've built product before, you've been a product manager before, like you spend all this time sort of like chasing features, right? So it's like, what features do my competitors have? What features do my customers want, and so forth. So you're constantly chasing features, and you don't really, until something you build gets really big, you don't start thinking about like, oh, okay, I'll start having these tiered versions of my product, like an entry level, and then an advanced level or enterprise level or whatever. And like I feel like that's almost like day one for the SaaS people, because it's like, if you're a user of SaaS, so if you go, okay, we need something done, we're going to go find a SaaS service that does it. Like to me, it's always like a two-step process. Like step one is like, does this thing do what I want it to do? And then step two is you start like going through their pricing model, and you're like, all right, how am I going to get screwed? Right? Like I want these features, but like then there's this one that's in the next tier, and I feel like that's going to, like it's a stupid thing, because you like the one tier will be like $29 a month, and then the next one's like $99 a month, and you're like, oh my God, that's so much more expensive, but I want that one feature. But like, and so it's got to be a weird like sort of world to live in, because at some point you're trying to build this great product for people. You want them to all come to your thing. You don't really want them to think about pricing. And then at some point you're like, I know they're going to get big, and I know their CFO is going to look at this thing. And at some point, like we're going to go through, soft economy or whatever, and they're all going to freak out. And so we're going to need to have some mechanism in which, they don't just, pull the plug on us, but we have these like flexible, ways of being like, oh, no, don't leave, but we'll give you a 10% discount or something. I mean, it's almost like the reverse. It's almost like the reverse Oracle. Like the Oracle thing was like, all right, we got you. Now we're going to completely screw you on pricing forever. Whereas I feel like with the SaaS thing, it's like getting out of a SaaS and then finding another SaaS that does the same thing. Unless it's like, Salesforce, like that feels like it's like a constant model that they must be churning through all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add this. So I actually went through this exercise over the last couple of months in the day job, and it is really interesting to approach, kind of taking all of what everyone just said. Like, okay, yeah, you set up these tiers, and you're going to charge this much per tier, but it's always like this quote unquote value, right? It's always this mystical. How much value are they going to get? Are they willing to pay for this? And then there's always the, okay, here's the list price on it. Well, hey, here's the list price on it. But, based off of our company, what kind of discounts do we normally give to the customers? And do they still see value? And, oh, by the way, this customer only cares about this one little feature that's in the top level tier. And if they don't have that, it's useless. And so they want a 90% discount because all they want is this one feature, and they're not going to use anything else. And so for me, it was like the big takeaway was, again, it's like, oh gosh, like value is this mystical thing that's way above and beyond just straight up financials. It's this intangible, and it is like, okay, how do you get the majority of the customers in your quote unquote giving them value? So I found it really, really fascinating. It's a neat area to explore going forward.
Yeah. The other thing I've learned, in Aaron, you and I have tried to figure out the SaaS market on this show and through different stuff, and like, we'll listen to the SaaStr podcast, or we'll read Cloud at Judgment, or we'll do whatever. And like, you can think you sort of have some sense of like what the SaaS market looks like. I tell you what, if you want to learn, the best way to figure out the SaaS market is just join a startup, and you will immediately get 10 to 12 people every single day reaching out to you, offering some sort of SaaS that you're just like, that's an entire company. Like, every feature you can think of under the sun, everything you would like to have happen, like, oh, I wish all my emails were tagged a certain way, or I wish, my calendar thing would do it. There's a SaaS for that, and they will find you and they will reach out to you, and you're just like, it could be a full-time job doing nothing but just like interviewing and assessing SaaSes for startups. And like, I feel like when people talk about there being like thousands of SaaSes out there, like that's who they go after. They're not, they're not going after the enterprise. They're going after every small startup every day in every way possible. It's a weird way to see the world.
Yeah, to that end, I think the big thing you see with that is not only do they all offer different features, they all offer different pricing models. So the pricing model, kind of the part, the consumption versus subscription, and then kind of the nuances even inside that, like what exactly you're charging for consumption, or like how exactly our users license. That's every time I've been a part of it firsthand, it's like that's as big a part of like finding new features, the innovation inside of just figuring out like what pricing model people want to use. That's a constant source of like trial and error and it takes a long time. And I think some companies, you almost feel like you never get it right. You just pick the thing that's like least bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go and I'm just, what the hell? I'm just going to light this fuse. So it is, and as Brandon mentioned, we have to sort of put a timestamp on this. So we're recording this on June 15th. I think we're going to publish a show around the 29th of June. So, again, around vacation time. So here's my question to you guys, and I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to ask it. Is there any aspect of the crypto industry that hasn't proven to be a complete sham this year? Right? And here's my checklist. Is it decentralized? No. Do these DAOs for governance work? No. Is it controlled by the community and not by like central companies? No. Is it secure? No. Is it not linked to fiat currencies? So like when the dollar goes down, is it not going to go down? No. Is it good technology? Like, is it not unbelievably wasteful, or is it a fast database? No. Is it mostly A16 propaganda? Yeah. Like, I'm looking for any aspect of the crypto industry that every claim that they've made, whether it's from Matt Damon to A16Z to anybody, has any of their claims proven to be true?
Yeah. And well, first of all, I'll start with poor Matt Damon has become the poster child for all of this now. And yeah, it's pretty funny. So I'll start, by the way, completely agree with everything you say, but I've said it before too. I find the blockchain technology, not crypto and cryptocurrencies, but the blockchain technology, I guess it's maybe just because I'm a storage person at heart. I found that super fascinating. I actually took a couple courses, online, and I really like the blockchain technology. To your point, it's slow. It definitely has its issues. And then, it turns out the entire crypto industry was a bunch of whales that can completely control the market and then go under or completely, modify the prices. And so I think everything's being exposed over time. I don't know where it goes from here, and then when, like you said, when we're recording this, Bitcoin is super low. ETH is super low. I don't know. I don't know where it goes from here. But I thought blockchain is cool. I thought it was cool. I still think it's cool, but that's it.
But I think that's where the history maybe should be start when you write this is just to say it's like the blockchain. Like if we just go back in time and just say it's like blockchain was a really interesting solution to like a well-known computer science problem. Like how do you figure out distributed trust? Okay, so what I think happened though is it just unfortunately is like okay. Like any new technology, it's not always immediately obvious where it should be applied. The fact that it then got applied to a currency potentially and then financial products, right? That just threw open the door to just wild speculation, right? Whereas a lot of times technologies can just kind of sit on the shelf and kind of just mature over time. Like think about AI, right? Like a lot of that stuff I think is from like the 60s, right? A lot of those ideas were from the 60s, but computers were slow and it didn't work. And those papers just kind of sat around. People learned about it. And then as, computers got faster, now we're seeing a lot of practical applications. And I think, the huge mistake, right, was just like, saying, okay, let's throw it out and just let everybody that has ever wanted to do anything in finance take a run at it. And I think, Brian, to your point, listed out just a ton of problems. But the other part, I guess, to me, that's been maybe even more disappointing is just to see people that I think maybe 5 years ago, I think were like, we would consider them like smart, like very leaders in technology, right? I mean, I just think the hypocrisy they're now showing around like just people questioning, Bitcoin, questioning crypto. And it's like suddenly all these VCs and all these people that made their living doing that, like questioning, ideas, questioning startups, suddenly, if you ask any type of questions, you show any doubt, then suddenly, it's just nothing but personal attacks against you or your ideas. And God forbid you ask a question like, I don't know, maybe it uses too much energy. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of scams, right? And I think that's to your point about A16 seems to be front and center. I think their legacy whether they like it or not is going to be tied to this crypto. If it turns out it's right, they'll be billionaires. If it turns out it's wrong, I think it's not going to be a good look for them. And I just throw out a couple things. If you want to follow kind of this, I think, there's the Web3 is going just great. It's a blog and by Molly White, and she just is doing a great job covering just all the absurdity of it. And then more on the financial side, a newsletter I love is written by Matt Levine over at Bloomberg, and he just sort of like every day he cranks out what feels like another like dissertation on, here's what the crypto people are trying to do. Here's why the financial markets don't do that, and then here's why it's not working. And it's just been a great education for me, just like learning about all the mistakes. So yeah, couldn't agree more, Brian. It seems like it's just a big mess, and I don't know if we're able. It will probably be a long time before we see something come out of the blockchain that we think is really useful, and none of us probably have any idea of what it really is.
Yeah, well, and it sort of aligns to every one of the great technology bubbles and so forth. They all align to super low interest rates. So at some point, when interest rates become super low again, just have some sort of red flag going on in the back of your mind, like, hey, the stuff may not last forever, or the promises may not pan out. So, Brandon's back to you in the snake draft, if you will.
All right. Well, this is like a long time industry, or if you will, problem I've been following for, it feels like decades in my career. So passwords are have been here forever, since the dawn of the first computer. There have been many attempts to kill them off. None of them have even really come close. But there's, recently, won't go into too much details, but FIDO has been adopted now by really Google, Microsoft, and Apple. They're all going to, if you will, allow us to do some type of, kind of more advanced authentication using certificates. But in theory, right, this is going to be the moment where, because of that integration, it's going to be easy for the mainstream user to actually do it. So my question is, we'll start with you, Brian. Are we actually on the right path? Like, are we on the path to passwords finally going away in the next 5 or 10 years? Or is this yet another false start? And our children's children will still be using passwords. What do you think?
So I gotta ask, because I don't keep up with this stuff too much. What is FIDO? Give me the Cliff Notes version of FIDO, and most importantly, like, how am I going to explain this to like my mother as to, if there's like a certificate involved? Because right now, She just writes it down on this. She literally has a book that has like, all of her passwords written down. So give me the basics of FIDO. What do we need to know about this?
All right. Well, kudos to your mom. If she's at least writing a book down with different passwords, she's way ahead of the game. Maybe the next step is we'll get her on 1Password. That's another show. But FIDO really, just the Cliff Notes version of that is essentially what you will do is you'll use probably your mobile device. So instead of when you register for an account, so instead of, typing in a password, you'll just, if you will, hold your phone next to the computer, or if you're on it, and that phone will basically generate what are behind the scenes, basically, keys, but you don't really need to know about it. So we'll just basically identify a credential. And then what's good about that is that credential will live just like, if you're using the iPhone, like the secure enclave, if you will. So that credential will never leave that phone. It can't leave that phone. So that way, when I move around and I'm logging into sites on Google, Safari, or Microsoft, I can just use my phone, and it will just magically to the mainstream user. It'll just sort of pass this credential back and forth, and you'll never have to see the password ever again. And the password can't be phished because it's only on that device. So FIDO, that standard to do that's been around probably for 5 years and really had zero adoption. Like the people at YubiKey and others would argue about that, but like, hey, no one's carrying a YubiKey, as I often make fun of that. But with the phone and the mainstream adoption of the 3 major browsers, it feels like it could happen. So that's the Cliff Notes version. So you'll basically tell your mom, okay, don't use, throw out your password book there, all your notes, and just hold it up to your phone, up to the thing, and it will magically authenticate you. So I don't know. Will she accept that, or does that seem like just too much magic for her?
No, I think it's good. I think as long as they never lose their phone, and I assume there's some sort of mechanism, like if you transfer your phone or if you lose your phone, that, I don't know, maybe you can get it back. No, I like it. I love the fingerprint touch thing. I love the facial recognition. I love, anything that's going to get rid of passwords. And even just, I'm to the point where even if I don't remember the password, I don't try. I'm like, yeah, I forgot it. Send me the email. I'll redo it. Anything to get rid of passwords, anything to get rid of password rotations, or it's been 90 days, you have to have a new one. My only knock on passwords is like, I hate the one who goes, oh, you've already used that one before. And I'm like, look, there's a reason I'm trying to use it again is because I can't remember any more of them. And, but yeah, I think it's awesome. It's, there are lots of, I'll put it this way, like there are things that used to be part of our day-to-day life, passwords being one of them, that people hopefully don't have to do anymore. Like I think about it, I used to remember everybody's phone number, all 9 digits or 10 digits or whatever. My kids, I don't know my kids' phone numbers. My kids don't know any of their friends' phone numbers. And it's just because we've replaced it with something simpler. So yeah, I'm all for that. I'm vote me a yeah.
All right, Aaron. All right, Aaron. Well, I know, Aaron, I know you've done some interviews with I think a sponsor, one of your sponsors, Strong DM, and I've heard we've
done Teleport as well. Yeah.
So I was going to say, well, just to set you up, it's like, the idea of certificate-based authentication, zero trust, really now, I think, really taking hold, right, in the enterprise. I feel like those companies are good examples.
No,
so
agreed,
I guess, Aaron, do you think it's going to happen
from an enterprise standpoint? I agree. I think that's the future. Making everything certificate-based is absolutely where everything's going to go. On the personal level, like, I don't know if y'all saw the latest Apple keynote, the WWDC one happened recently, but they did do, and I don't know if it was related to FIDO because they didn't mention FIDO.
Passkeys
passkeys.
That's the Apple version of it. Yep.
Right. And so they did that, and I was like, oh wow, okay. Like I do remember that going, okay, that's cool. Now I will say the flip side to all of that is because the last time I did a phone upgrade, and then one of my daughters did it too. The authenticator right now is a huge issue because it's like, oh, okay, you have a new phone. Now you have to reset up the authenticator. And like, I've done two-factor authentication pretty much everywhere. Holy crap, that becomes painful now. So even if passwords go away, like I'm like, okay, I'm down to, okay, the phone and the two-factor authentication with authenticators is my huge headache these days. Now it's not going to happen that often, right? Every couple of years when you get a new phone, but I definitely am like, okay, yeah, I'm getting the whole phone is central to your life. I mean, yeah, Brian, like we don't remember passwords anymore. We don't remember phone numbers anymore. So why not just put everything on the phone these days? But at an enterprise level, yeah, the certificate-based authentication, I'm all for. And even 1Password, like I'll say, like, yeah, I have 1Password. I keep everything in 1Password. We keep everything for the family in 1Password. Even that is cumbersome. So the sooner this goes away, the better.
Amen.
All right, Aaron, you're next.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to my SaaS topic. So we always, talk about skills and up-leveling and constantly learning on this show. And one thing I've noticed is kind of this trend over time of, we used to have the server admin, the storage admin, the networking admin, and then we had the full, on-prem, knows all the stuff in the stack admin, and then we had cloud, and then we only had a couple services way back when. And then now you've got Amazon and their hundreds of services, and Azure and all their services, and GCP and all their services. So now you start to see cloud architects that specialize pretty much just in the stack, but it's just in the cloud. Well, if everything goes SaaS, and SaaS is all about giving you something and you just go operate it, how do people keep up in the future? How do people keep up about SaaS? Do they just need to know, like maybe it's like what Brian said earlier, somebody who just knows all the SaaS companies and how to use them? Is there going to be a SaaS architect? Is the cloud architect going away? Like kind of like the infrastructure admin at times? Like, what's your thoughts on how people keep up in the SaaS world? Why don't we go Brian? Since I said Brendan last time, why don't we go Brian?
So I saw sort of a funny tweet the other day, and it basically said, in 10 years, your business technology stack is going to be, the executives will have a spreadsheet, the development team will have JavaScript and some sort of SQL database, and that'll be it. And you think about it and you go like, maybe, if you abstract all the infrastructure away, other than like somebody being responsible for security, because God forbid you let the developers have to be responsible for security, like it's not that far off. I mean, like I know Brandon's always been a big fan of serverless. We've been big fans of serverless, but I mean like, and maybe that doesn't, do everything, but in the context of being in the cloud, it's like, you might as well let the infrastructure get abstracted, have somebody figure out, data and databases, have somebody figure out security, and then have developers write code. And everything else, maybe you don't have to worry about it. And, on the SaaS side, I mean, in theory, don't even think about it. Just worry about, pricing and all that other kind of garbage for number of users and things. So, I mean, it's a long way out, but I mean, at this point, it's like, unless you're going to be all in on VMware, just, start trying to think about how you simplify it and what you give up to the cloud provider, and just trust that they're going to be around for a long time, because it seems like they're going to be around for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the whole question I thought was really interesting when I read it. I was like, well, how do you keep up with SaaS? I was like, well, that's a great question. I don't really have an answer. I was just trying to think to myself, like, I don't think I'm doing a good job at that, because I just find just trying to keep abreast of them all. Sounds like Brian is the right way. You join a startup and they just call you. But I guess what I do is I'm always just looking for a quick YouTube demo video and a free tier trial, right? To just like learn, like, what does this thing actually do? So I don't know. That's sort of the brute force approach. But I will say, it's like, I agree, if you're starting a company today, and I think that's maybe why Brian gets so many calls from SaaS vendors, like, you would probably do everything SaaS. But, my day job is just like working with like all the large enterprises, like both of you. And it's just the issue going forward is, it's like, there's just so much legacy stuff that's just it's not going anywhere. It's like, we talk about replacing it all the time with SaaS, but companies almost always opt for like, let's just kind of migrate what we have to the cloud, right? That's like 99% of the time, because they just feel like it's not possible, it's too hard, or, lots of different reasons. And then two, it's just never underestimate the ability for everyone to think they're unique. So many times people are just like, well, we're talking about the one feature. There's like, every SaaS is always like, well, they'll find one feature that it doesn't do exactly the way that they want. Someone will decide, well, we have to build our own thing, right? Or that's, and it's just, we have to keep doing what we've been doing before. So I think, the dawn of SaaS obviously been here for a long time, but it'll be a long, long time before people stop either customizing the things that they currently have or deciding they need to build their own thing. I think those are just two human traits that will persist forever.
Yeah. Or just, at this point, since Broadcom's going to spin off everybody from VMware, just spin up your own, basically, partner for doing VMware. Get back into doing VMware again, because obviously, that part of the business is going to kind of reinvent itself. So opportunity to do that.
We don't really talk about it so much with VMware, but the other side, I know everyone at VMware is collectively, it seems like everyone at VMware is a little depressed, and I get that. But I am actually looking forward to this. There's going to be a bunch of people that leave VMware, and they're all going to go. Some of them are going to go on to do really interesting things. I think. Is it Joe Beta? Beta? I don't know. I forget his name, how to say that name. But I think he just left, right? He was like one of the founders, right, of Kubernetes and all that. So it's like everyone will take a year off or two, and then something interesting will happen, like some good stuff and some bad stuff. So that'll be a fun thing for all of us to watch and podcast about in the future.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I mean, like I saw Joe Beta retired. Congratulations to him. My only suggestion is just like, I mean, think about it. If you get to the point where you're like, I want to do another startup, just think about the number of emails and the number of customer meetings and the number of internal meetings that you're signing up for versus just being on a beach. I mean, if you've got $40 or $50 million, somebody will make you a great beach chair and an endless supply of margaritas. Like, don't downplay that versus, again, the number of emails and other things that you may have to take on.
Remember, they're going to go back into a whole nother level, Brian. I think it's different when you're when you're the CEO or the VC and you're hiring people to do much of that work you just talked about. So I don't know, but it doesn't. You're right. Like, I always think, like, I think I'd sit on the beach, but as more and more we watch, these people always come back. They always come back. I don't know why, but it always happens.
I know. For the record, I would not come back.
Yeah, I'm not coming back. When Aaron and I sell off Cloudcast to Spotify, we are not coming back.
All right, when the deal's done, I get it. All right,
we're leaving the old shows in the archive for you, but we're not coming.
No more podcasting. You'll be like, that's it. We're done.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So here's my next question, and we've been going for a while, but I'm still going to throw it out here. Like, I was thinking about what are we going to do for the mid-year show? What are the big things we're going to talk about? And it's almost like, thank goodness the VMware thing came along, because my argument or my question is like, did the big three cloud providers just fire all their marketing people? I feel like there's been nothing announced this year from the big three cloud providers, and I don't know if it's because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like, I don't feel like there's been a really big announcement or a really big merger or a really big acquisition it's just like, yeah, they're just kind of like, yeah, once a quarter, we'll let you know we made a whole crap load of money and we made more money than last quarter. But like, I don't feel like anybody's talking about any new features, any new capabilities. Am I missing something? I feel like we cover this every week, but like, does this year feel really quiet from the big three cloud providers?
I don't think you missed anything. I think we'll probably take them one by one. I think in the case of AWS, I think what you're seeing is really two things. One, there's just a ton of features it already has that customers, frankly, are just trying to like churn through whatever the 150 plus services AWS has. So I think there's just a point where like sustaining features have kind of taken over a lot of those services. And I don't think that's bad. I think that's what's just sort of like where the industry is at. And then two, I mean, the other thing, the news that has come out of AWS has mostly been on like who's coming and going, right? So obviously Adam Slepsky took over, whatever, it feels like a long time ago, I guess sometime last year. And it's clear, right, if you kind of just been following, lots of people have left AWS. They've obviously made tons of money and they want to go on to other jobs. And then I think Adam is bringing in his own staff. So I just think it's kind of natural. Like there, you kind of see kind of a little bit of a reset, right? Like who's going to be leading this? What are they going to be doing? And I would expect, kind of this year's reInvent. And if not this year, certainly kind of next year's, we'll sort of like, we'll see a return. I don't know if we'll ever get back to the pace that we saw before, but we'll see if they kind of pick it up. So I think that one is kind of my take on AWS. I don't know. GCP, is the one I always think they're going to do something big. I think I predict it every single time. I'm like, this is it. Something big's going to happen with GCP. But the only thing I see out of them is just sort of like, I don't know, Thomas Kurian trying to like instill a different culture there, maybe a culture that's sort of like not like the Google culture. And so maybe that hasn't taken as quickly as he wants. I don't think maybe that slowed them down. And then I don't know. I have no idea what's happening at Microsoft. They seem like they're just happy doing a great job in delivering business. And like, they just seem like, yeah, we're doing great. So that would be my take. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I was going to say, so going back to if I said VMware is at the end of that S curve, which meaning they went from innovation and then, they're maximizing profits and then they're a commodity. I think cloud is in the middle of that S curve, meaning we're beyond the big announcements and the big splashes and lots of new products. Like we're just flat in the middle of that S curve where it's maximized profits right now. And it will eventually hit commodity stage, but I think it's more we've moved from the S curve to the middle of the S curve. I mean, it's been 10, 15 years into cloud at this point, if you really go back to the earlier days. And so I just think it's a natural progression. I think the big things, innovative things have been done. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be more announcements in the future, but I think we're past the height of the new innovation and the new announcements.
Yeah. So we're to draw this back to the VMware analogy, we're at the stage where they're like, hey, we now let you have 64 gig VMs. Pretty awesome, huh? Yeah. That's where we're at. We've done everything else.
A new Graviton processor rolls out. You're like,
that's right.
Okay, yeah,
that's right.
But I do think the action, the place you see the action I like to watch is like, Cloudflare's, I think, has done some interesting things, like taking some shots at AWS around bandwidth, right? And then Akamai acquired Linode, right? So that's another like infrastructure as a service. So it is kind of, it's funny how the disruptors become kind of the new targets. And I think at least that, where the news is, I think, is kind of these lower level companies to see if anyone can kind of fight their way up to the top. And then, we saw some like specifically good news out of Oracle. Oracle's cloud seems to be growing if you were to believe that. So, maybe that's what it is. They got big targets on their backs right now. And, we'll probably see more news out of the people trying to take them down versus the leaders.
All right. So we're at the 43-minute mark. We'll let this thing go for about 5 or 6 more minutes because the kids are probably screaming for ice cream or whatever you're doing on your vacation. All right, lightning round. I know everybody sort of wrote down some extra just random questions. Go ahead, throw them out. We'll lightning round, yes or no answers or quick responses. Brandon, go ahead and start.
All right, important question. I'm based in Texas where we have a lot of barbecue. I just want to know from both of you, North Carolina, like which is better, brisket or pork? And then 2, do you put coleslaw on your barbecue sandwiches? So start with you, Brian.
Give me brisket. I mean, as long as it's good brisket, give me brisket, especially Texas brisket. And yes, I do put coleslaw on pork barbecue sandwiches.
All right, Aaron.
Brisket when I can get it, but I'm more pork because I don't travel very much, so I don't get brisket much anymore. So I'm more pork, and yes to coleslaw on pork sandwiches.
All right, Aaron. Any lightning round questions?
I'm gonna one specifically for you, Brian.
Yes.
And I get this feedback all the time when we talk about it. So you get really good feedback on the Perspective Show.
Yeah.
How committed are you to the Perspective Show? How hard is it to come up with those questions? Do you get sick of the questions? Do you get sick of the show? Like, you're going to keep doing it. What's the deal? Everyone wants to know.
So I like doing them. And I like doing them. People wonder if it's hard to talk for 20 or 30 minutes. I think once you sort of write out the talking points, it's not that hard. The hardest part is coming up with the questions. And it's like, I used to have a long list of them. I feel like I've gone through a good chunk of the list. And then at some point, they were just sort of coming to me as I was walking the dog or something, like on a Friday. So then I record on a Saturday. As long as I can keep coming up with interesting topics, and I feel like they're not all just like either like, the history of why some company was good or bad, or some job advice. Like if I can keep coming up with those, I'll keep doing them. And if not, maybe we'll just figure out an interesting way to do something on Sundays. But I'm committed to doing them as long as I can come up with ideas for them. So,
well, I'll just let you know over at Software Defined Talk, when we talk off the record about it, we Cote likes to refer to you as the Paul Harvey. It's like I know that would probably mean nothing to like most people, and I apologize to all the international listeners because that would definitely not mean anything. But Cote feels like you've kind of got like a Paul Harvey in the most good way possible. Paul Harvey, good vibe going. He was a radio commentator that would just come on once a week with sort of like a take on something. So I think, Brian, I think you need to stay committed, double down. There's always more questions to answer. Don't give up. Right. So we all appreciate the show.
All right, last question, and this is, I guess this is sort of, we're now a gambling podcast in case DraftKings or anybody wants to sponsor us. Over under on number of people that attend AWS reInvent live this year.
Over under.
Because I think before it got up to like 80,000 in pre-COVID days, and then maybe last year was like 20,000 when it was like, okay, COVID's over, but not really. What's the over under this year?
I'm going to go because I know everything was pretty much sold out or whatever last year, and the limited stuff. I don't know if it can. I'm going to say it gets back to pre-pandemic levels or right at it. So I would say maybe slightly over, right? So if it was at 80, I'll say 81,000.
Aaron, you got the last word for the show.
I'm going to go much more conservative. I'm going to say 40,000.
All right. Last thing, since this is essentially a vacation podcast, a killing time podcast, any great advice you guys have for people that are on vacations, especially if you've got multiple kids with you, ways for sanity or ways to keep the kids entertained?
Well, I'll start. Yeah, my recommendation is we're in my household, we're a big Apple TV household. So I just bring the Apple TV with me, and they now support, you can register like a captive Wi-Fi. So if you're like a hotel Wi-Fi, it's great. So just bring your Apple TV or your streaming device that you have at home, plug it into your hotel TV or your vacation TV, and just be like, okay, everybody has exactly the same distractions they have at home. They have them here. I find that to be a fantastic way to occupy the children.
Nice.
Yep. So I'm going to say, good bit of family advice, but then there's the caveat to it. Lots and lots and lots of sunscreen. We're about to go on vacation, and we're in the process of mass buying sunscreen. And oh, by the way, our kids probably won't use it, but it makes us feel better to have it. So if nothing else, to make yourself feel better and hopefully keep your kids from getting sick.
Maybe your kids are older because we're still trying to, at the end of it, we're still trying to enforce the swim shirt rule. It's like, hey, at some point it's just like, put the swim shirt on, because I know that works. So, but I know we're getting toward the end of where I can. It's harder and harder to mandate that. I'm trying. We'll see.
All right, gentlemen, good stuff. We've been going for a while. I think we covered most topics for the mid-year. Brandon, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it as always. And any plugs you want to give for Software Defined Talk before we wrap up?
Absolutely. If you're not tired, if you need more distractions from your family, we've got several hundred episodes at softwaredefinedtalk.com. Subscribe to the podcast. You'll get a lot of discussion like this and probably more nonsense. So we'd love to have you as a listener. Check it out, softwaredefinedtalk.com.
Good stuff. All right, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for a good first half of the year. And thanks for telling a friend and helping us grow the show. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.